Welcome everyone to this live podcast on Twitch where you can find the news from the research industry and get you update from the research industry that how our researcher and scientists keep on research on various domains to keep our lifestyle more better or more sustainable. So yep. And yes, these articles are posted on our website named postscientist.com. So if you're willing to check it out, please check it out. Otherwise, listening to this podcast will be enough for you guys because it acts like an archive on the daily basis, providing in the information from the research industry. So without wasting any time further, let's get started with our first topic of the day. Nobel Physics winner wanted to topple quantum theory. He vindicated. Hmm. American physicist John Clauser won the 2022 Nobel Prize for a groundbreaking experiment vindicating quantum mechanics, a fundamental theory governing the subatomic world that is today the foundation of an emerging class of ultra powerful computers, of course. But when he carried out his work in the 1970s, Clauser was actually hoping for the opposite result to upend the field and prove Albert Einstein had been right to dismiss it, he told AFP in an interview. The truth is that I strongly hoped that Einstein would win, which could mean that quantum mechanics was giving incorrect predictions, the 79-year-old said, speaking by telephone from his home in Walnut Creek, just outside San Francisco. Born in Pasadena in 1942, Clauser credited his father, an engineer who designed planes in the war and founded the aeronautics department of Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, for instilling in him a lifelong love of science. I used to wander around his laboratory and say, wow, oh boy, when I grow up, I want to be a scientist so I can play with these fun toys too. As a graduate student at Columbia in the mid 1960s, he grew interested in quantum physics alongside this thesis work on radio astronomy. Okay, interesting. Quantum entanglement. According to quantum mechanics, two or more particles can exist in what's called an entangled state. What happens to one in an entangled pair determines what happened to the other, no matter their distance. The fact that this occurred instantly contradicted Einstein's theory of relativity, which held that nothing, including information, can travel faster than the speed of light. oh, oh. In 1935, he dismissed this element of quantum entanglement called non locality as spooky action at a distance. Of course. Einstein instead believed that hidden variable that instructed the particle state to take must be at play, placing him at odds with his great friend but intellectual advisor Niels Bohr, a founding father of quantum theory. Okay. In 1964, the Northern Irish physicist John Bell proposed a theoretical way to measure whether there were in fact hidden variables inside quantum particles. Clauser realized that he could resolve the long standing Bohr and Einstein debate if he could create the right experiment. Right. My thesis advisor thought it was distraction from my work in astrophysics, he recalled, but underrated, he wrote to Bell, who encouraged him to take up the idea. It wasn't until Clauser had completed his doctorate and taken up a job at UC Berkeley that he was actually able to start working on the experiment along with the collaborator Stuart Friedman. They focused a laser on calcium atoms, make it emit particles of entangled photon pairs that shot off in opposite direction and use filters set to side to measure whether they were correlated. After hundreds of thousands of runs, they found the pair correlated more than Einstein would have predicted, proving the reality of spooky action with hard data at the time. Leading lights of the field were unimpressed, said Clauser, including the renowned physicist Richard Feynman. I told him this work was totally silly. You're wasting everybody's time and money, and threw him out his office. Questioning the foundation of quantum mechanics was deemed unnecessary. Quantum computing. That wasn't the view of Nobel Committee, who awarded Clauser Allen Aspect of France and Anton Zillinger of Austria the world's most prestigious science prize for the pioneering work in advancing the field. It took a long time for people to realize the importance of the work, chuckled Clauser. But I suppose It is a certain vindication how everyone was telling me it was silly. Einstein theory had more appeal to Closet and Morse when he focused to not fully grasping, but over time he came to realize the true value of his and his co-winners' experiments, demonstrating that a single bit of information can be distributed through space is today at the core of quantum computers. Closer pointed to China quantum encrypted MICA's communication satellites, which relies on entangled photons thousands of kilometers apart. We did not prove what quantum mechanics is. We proved what mechanics isn't. Quantum mechanic isn't. Okay, he said, and knowing what it is not then has practical application. Hmm. So these are the findings given by the Nobel Physics winner. Wanted to topple quantum theory, but he vindicated about this theory and tried to focusing on the Einstein theory and try to prove them. So, yep. But still, they're gonna be a physics winner and shared three scientists Nobel physics winner Nobel Prize in physics in the quantum mechanics itself. Hmm. Let's see. Let's read it and read their idea of the quantum mechanics. Three scientists share Nobel Prize in physics for work in quantum mechanics. Hmm. Three scientists jointly won this year Nobel Prize in Physics Tuesday for proving that tiny particles could retain a connection with each other even when separated phenomena once doubted but now being explored for potential real-world applications such as encrypting information, of course, Frenchman alien aspect, American John F. Clauser, and Austrian Anton Zillinger were cited by the Royal Swedish Academy of Science for experiment proving the total crazy field of quantum entanglements to be all too real. They demonstrated that unseen particles such as photons can be linked or entangled with each other even when they are separated by large distances. It all goes back to feature of the universe that even baffled Albert Einstein connects matter and light in a tangled, chaotic way. Bits of information or matter that used to be next each other or other even though they are now separated have a connection or relationship something that can conceivably help encrypt information or even teleport. A Chinese satellite now demonstrates this and potential lightning fast quantum computers still at the small and not quite useful stage also rely on this entanglement. Others are even hoping to use it in a superconducting material. It is so weird. Expect shade of entangled in a telephone call with the novel community. I'm expecting in my mental images something which is totally crazy. Yet the trial experiment showed it happen in real life. Why this happened, I haven't the foggiest. Clauser told the Associated Press during a Zoom interview in which he got the official call from the Swedish Academy several hours after friends and media informed him of his award. Okay. I have no understanding of how it works, but entanglement appears to be very real. His fellow winners also said they can't explain this, how and why behind this effect, but each did ever more intricate experiment that proved it just is. Clauser 79 was awarded his prize for the 1972 experiment, cobbled together with scavenged equipment that helped settle a famous debate about the quantum mechanics between Einstein and famed physicist Niels Bohr. Einstein described a spooky action at a distance that he thought would eventually be disproved. Hmm. I was betting on Einstein. Clauser said, but unfortunately I was wrong and Einstein was wrong and Bohr was right. Hmm. Aspect said Einstein may have been technically wrong, but deserve huge credit for raising the right question that led to experiment to proving quantum entanglement. Of course, most people would assume that nature is made out of stuff distributed through space and time, said Clauser, who, while a high school student in the 1950s, built a video game on the vacuum tube computer, and that appears not to be that the case. Hmm. What the work shows is part of a universe, even those at great distances from each other are connected, said John Hopkins, physicist, and Peter Armitage. This is something so unintuitive and something so at odds with how we feel the world should be. Of course, this hard to understand field started with a thought experiment, but what is in one sense is a psychological musing about the universe also holds hope for more secure and faster computers, all based on entangled photons and matter that still interact no matter how distant. With my first experiment was something asked by the press what they were good for. Zillinger 77 told reporters Venia, and I said with pride, it's good for nothing. I'm doing this purely out of curiosity. In quantum entanglement, establishing common information between two photons not near each other allows us to do things like secret communication in ways which weren't possible to do before, said David Haviland, chair of the Nobel Committee for Physics. Quantum information has broad and potential application in areas such as secure information transfer, quantum computing, and sensing technology, said Eva Olson, a member of the Nobel Committee. Its prediction have opened doors to another world, and it has only shaken the very foundation of how we interpret measurements. The kind of secure communication used by China microsatellite as well as by some banks is a success story of quantum entanglement, said Haran Singley of Trinity College Dublin. By using one entangled particle to create an encryption key, it ensures that only the person with other entangled particle can decode the message, and the secret shared between these two sides is a proper secret, Sinchke said. While quantum entanglement is incredibly cool, security technologist Bruce Singer, who teaches at Harvard, said it is fortifying an already secure part of information technology where other areas, including human factors and software, are more of a problem. He likened it to installing a side door with 25 locks on an otherwise secure house. At a new conference aspect, said real world applications like the satellites were fantastic. I think we have progressed towards quantum computing. I would not say that we are close. The 75-year-old physicist said, I don't know if I will see it in my life, but I'm an old man. Yes, of course. Speaking by phone to a news conference after the announcement, the University of Vienna based Slinger said he was still kind of shocked at hearing he had received the award. Closer Respect and Slinger have figured in Nobel speculation for more than a decade. In 2010, they won the Wolf Prize in Israel, seen as a possible precursor to the Nobel. The Nobel Committee said Closer developed quantum theory first put forward in the 1960s into a practical experiment expect was able to close a loophole in those theories while Slinger quantum teleportation that effectively allows information to be transmitted over distances. Using an entangle, you can transfer all the information which is carried by an object over to some other places where the object is, so to speak, reconstituted. Zillinger said. He added that this only works for tiny particles. It's not like the Star Trek films where one is transporting something and certainly not the person over some distance. He said. A week of Nobel Prize announcement kicked off Monday and with Swedish scientist Svante Pabo receiving the award in medicine Monday for unlocking secrets of Netherlands DNA that provided key insights into our immune system. Chemistry is on Wednesday and literature on Thursday. The Nobel Peace Prize will be announced Friday and the Economics Award on October 10th. The prize carry a cash award of 10 million Swedish kronor, nearly $900 million, and will be handed out on December 10th. The money comes from a bequest left by the prize creator, Swedish dynamite inventor Alfred Nobel, who died in 1895. Nobel Committee press released the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2022. The Royal Swedish Academy of Science has decided to award the Nobel Prize in Physics to 2022 to Alien Expect, University Paris Clay and École Polytechnique Plasco, France, John F. Clauser, G. F. Clauser, and Associate Walnut Craig, California, US, Anton Zillinger, University of Vienna, Austria, for experiment with entangled photon establishing a violation of Bell inequalities and pioneering quantum information science. Entangled states from theory to technology, alien expert John Clauser and Anton Zillinger have each conducted groundbreaking experiment using entangled quantum states where two particles behave like a single unit even when they are separated. The results have cleared the way for new technology based upon quantum information. The inavailable effects of quantum mechanics have started to find application. There is a now large field of research that includes quantum computers, quantum networks, and secure quantum encrypted communication. One key factor is this development is how quantum mechanics allows two or more particles to exist in what is called an entangled state. What happens to one of the particles in an entangled pair determine what happened to the other particle even if they are far apart. For a long time, the question was whether the correlation was because the particle in an entangled pair contain hidden variable instruction that tell them which result they should give in an experiment. In the 1960s, John Stewart Bell developed the mathematical inequality that is named after him. This stated that if there are hidden variables, the correlation between the results of a large number of measurements will never exceed a certain value. However, the quantum mechanics predict that a certain type of experiment will violate Bell inequality, thus resulting in a stronger correlation that would otherwise be possible. John Clauser developed John Bell's ideas leading to practical experiment. When he took the measurement, they supported quantum mechanics by clearly violating a Bell inequality. This means that quantum mechanics cannot be replaced by a theory that uses hidden variables. Some loopholes remained after John Clauser's experiment. Alien expert developed a setup using it in a way that closed an important loophole. He was able to switch the measurement settings after an entangled pair had left its sources, so its setting that excited when they were emitted could not affect the result. Using refined tools and long series of experiments, Anton Zillinger started to use entangled quantum states. Among other things, his research group has demonstrated a phenomenon called a quantum teleportation, which makes it possible to move a quantum state from one particle to one at a distance. Hmm. It has become increasingly clear that a new kind of quantum technology is emerging. We can see the Lucret's work with entangled states is of great importance even beyond the fundamental question about the interpretation of quantum mechanics, says Anders Airbach, chair of the Nobel Committee of Physics for physics. How entangled has become a powerful tool. Using groundbreaking experiment, alien expert John Clauser and Anton Slinger have demonstrated the potential to investigate and control particles that are in entangled states. What happens to one particle in an entangled pair determines what happens to the other, even if they are really too far apart to affect each other. The Lurkert's development of experiment tools has laid the foundation for a new era of quantum technology. The fundamentals of quantum mechanics are not just a theoretical or physio- physiophical issue. Intense research and development are underway to utilize the special properties of individual particles to construct quantum computer, improve measurement, build quantum networks, and establish secure quantum encrypted communication. Many applications rest upon how quantum mechanics allow two or more particles to exist in a shared state, regardless of how far apart they are. This is called entanglement and has been one of the most debated elements of quantum mechanics ever since the theory was formulated. Albert Einstein talked about spooky action at a distance, and Edwin Schrödinger said it was quantum mechanics' most important trait. This year, liquids have explored these entangled quantum states, and their experiment laid the foundation of the revolution currently underway in quantum technology. Far from everyday experience, when two particles are in entangled quantum states, someone who measure a property of one particle can immediately determine the result of an equivalent measurement on the other particle without needing to check. What makes quantum mechanics so special is that its equivalent to the balls have no determined state until they are measured. It is as if both the balls are gray, right, or right up until someone look at one of them. Then it can randomly take either all the black the pair of blacks has access to, or can show itself to be white. The other ball immediately turns the opposite color. But how is it possible to know that the balls did not have a set color at the beginning? Even if they appeared gray, perhaps they had a hidden label inside saying which color they should turn and when someone look at them. Does color exist when no one is watching? Quantum mechanics entangled pair can be compared to the machine that throws out balls of opposite colors in opposite direction. When Bob catches a ball and sees that it is black, he immediately knows that Alice has caught it. A white one in a theory that used hidden variable to the balls had always contained hidden information about what color to show. However, quantum mechanics says the walls were gray until someone looked at them, when one randomly turned white and the other black. Bell inequalities shows that there are experiments that can differentiate between these cases. Such experiments have proven that quantum mechanics description is correct. An important part of the research being rewarded with this year Nobel Prize in Physics is a third detail insight called Bell inequalities. Bell inequality make it possible to differentiate between quantum mechanics interdeterminacy and an alternative description using secret instructions or hidden variables. Experiments have shown that the nature behavior is predicted by quantum mechanics. The balls are gray with no secret information, and chance determined which becomes a black and which becomes white in an experiment. Quantum mechanics' most important resource, quantum entangled quantum states, hold the potential for the new ways of storing, transferring, and processing information. Interesting things happen if the particles in an entangled pair travel in opposite direction, and one of them then meets a third particle in such a manner that they become entangled. They other than enter a new shared state. The third particle loses its identity, but its original properties have now been transferred to the solar particle from the original pair. This way of transferring an unknown quantum state from one particle to another is called quantum teleportation. This type of experiment was first conducted in 1997 by Anton Zillinger and his colleagues. Remarkably, quantum teleportation is only the way to transfer quantum information from one system to another without losing any part of it. It is absolutely impossible to measure all the properties of a quantum system and then send to information to a recipient who wants to reconstruct the system. This is because a quantum system can contain several versions of every property simultaneously, which every each version has a certain probability of appearing during a measurement. As soon as the measurement is conducted, only one version remains, namely one that was read by the measuring instrument. The others have disappeared, and it is impossible to ever know anything about them. However, entirely unknown quantum properties can be transferred using quantum teleportation and appear intact in other particle, but at the price of them being destroyed in the original particle. Once this had been shown experimentally, the next step was to use two pairs of entangled particles. If one particle from each pair are brought together in a particular way, the undistributed particle in each pair can become entangled despite never having been in contact with each other. This entangled swapping was first demonstrated in 1998 by Anton Zillinger's research group. Entangled pair of photons, particle of light, can be sent in opposite direction through optical fibers and function as signal in quantum network. Entangled between two pairs make it possible to extend the distance between the nodes in such a network. There is a limit to the distance that photons can be sent through an optical fiber before they are absorbed or lose their properties. Ordinary light signals can be amplified along the way, but this does not work with entangled pairs. An amplifier has to capture and measure the light which breaks the entanglement. However, entangled swapping means it is possible to send the original state further, thereby transferring it over longer distances than had otherwise been possible. Entangled particles that never met. Two pairs of entangled particles are emitted from different sources. One particle from each pair is brought together in a special way that entangles them. The two other particles, 1 and 4, in the diagram are then also entangled. In this way, two particles that never been in contact can become entangled, from paradox to inequality. This process rests on many years of development. It started with the mid-blogging insight that quantum mechanics allows a single quantum system to be divided up into parts that are separated from each other but still act as a single unit. This goes against all the usual ideas about cause and effect and the nature of reality. How can something be influenced by an event occurring somewhere else without being reached by some form of signal from it? A signal cannot travel faster than light, but in quantum mechanics, there doesn't seem to be any need of a signal to connect the different parts of an extended system. Albert Einstein regarded this as unfeasible and examined this phenomenon along with his colleagues Boris Podolsky and Rosen. They presented in the reasoning in 1935 quantum Mechanics does not appear to provide a complete description of reality. This has come to be called EPR paradox after the research initial. The question was whether there could be more complete description of the world where quantum mechanics is just one part. This could, for example, work through particles always carrying hidden information about what they will show as the result of an experiment. All the measurement then show the properties that exist exactly where the measurement are conducted. This type of information is often called local hidden variables. Okay. The Northern Irish physicist John Stewart Bell, 1928 to 1990, who worked at CERN at the European Particle Physics Laboratory, took a closer look at the problem. He discovered that there is a type of experiment that can determine whether the world is purely quantum mechanical or whether there could be another description with hidden variables. If his experiment is repeated many times, all theories with hidden variables show a correlation between the result that must be lower than or at most equal to a specific value. This is called band inequalities. However, quantum mechanics can violate this inequality. It predicts higher values for the correlation between the results than is possible through hidden variables. John Clauser became interested in the fundamental of quantum mechanics as a student in the 1960s. He could not shake off the John Bell idea once he had read about it, and eventually he and three other researchers were able to present a proposal for the realistic type of experiment that can be used to test a Bell inequalities. The experiment involves setting a pair of entangled particles in opposite direction. In practice, photons that have property called polarization are used. When the particles are emitted, the direction of the polarization is undetermined, and all that is certain is that the particle have parallel polarization. This can be investigated using a filter that allows through polarization that is oriented in a particular direction. See figure experiment with Bell inequalities. This is the effect used in many sunglasses which block a light that has been polarized in a certain plane, for example by refracting of water. In both, the particles in the experiment are sent towards filters that are oriented in the same plane, such as vertical, and one slip through, then the other one will also go through. If they are at right angles to each other, one will be stopped while the other will go through. The trick is to measure with the filter set in different directions at skewed angles, as then the result can vary. Sometimes both slip through, sometimes just one, and sometimes none. How often both particles get through the filter depends on the angle between the filters. Quantum mechanics lead to the correlation between measurement. The likelihood of one particle getting through depends on the angle of the filter that tested its partner's polarization on the opposite side of the experiment setup. This means that the result of both measurement at some angles violates a Bell inequality and have a strong correlation than they would if the result were governed by hidden variable and were already predetermined when the particles were emitted. While at inequality, John Clauser immediately started working on conducting this experiment. He built an apparatus that emitted two entangled photons at a time, each towards a filter that tested their polarization. In 1972, along with the doctoral student Stuart Friedman, 1944-2012, he was able to show a result that was a clear violation of a Bell inequality and agreed with the prediction of quantum mechanics. In the year that followed, John Clauser and the physicists continued discussing the experiment and its limitation. One of these was that the experiment was generally inefficient, both when it comes to producing and capturing particles. The measurement was also preset with the filter at fixed angles. There were therefore loopholes where an observer could question the result. What if the experimental setup in some way selected the particle that happened to have a strong correlation and did not detect the others? If so, the particle could be still carrying hidden information. Eliminating the particle loophole was difficult because in-twin quantum states are so fragile and difficult to manage. It is necessary to deal with individual photons. French doctoral student Alien Aspect was not intimidated and built a new version of the setup that he refined over the several iterations. In his experiment, he could register the photon that passed through through the filter and those that did not. This meant more photons were detected and the measurement were better. In the final variant of research, he was able to steer photons towards two different filters that were set at different angles. The finish was a mechanism that switched the direction of the entangled photon after they had been created and emitted from their source. The filters were just 6 meters away, so the switch needed to occur in a few billions of a second. If information about which filter the photon would arrive at influenced how it was emitted from the source, it would not arriving at the filter, nor could information about the filters on one side of the experiment reach the other side and affect the result of the measurement there. In this way, alien experiment closed an important loophole and provided a very clear result. Quantum mechanics is correct, and there are no hidden variables. The era of quantum information. The era of quantum information, these and similar experiments laid the foundation for the current intense research in quantum information science, being able to manipulate and manage quantum state and all the layers of probability gives us access to tools with unexpected potential. This is the basics of quantum computation, the transfer and storage of quantum information, and algorithm for quantum encryption system with more than two particles, all of which are entangled, are now in use. With Anton Zillinger and his colleagues were the first to explore experimenting with Bell inequalities. Anton Zillinger later conducted more tests of Bell inequalities. He created entangled pairs of photons by shining a laser on a special crystal and used random number to shift between measurement settings. One experiment used signal from distant galaxies to control the filters and ensure the signals could not affect each other. These increasingly refined tools bring realistic application even closer. Entangled quantum states have now been demonstrated between photons that have been set through tens of kilometers of optical fiber and between a satellite and a station on the ground. In a short time, research around the world have found many new ways to utilize the most powerful property of quantum mechanics. The first quantum revolution gave us transistor and lasers, but we are now entering a new era thanks to contemporary tools for manipulating system of entangled particles. So these are the finding, experimenting thing, giving the most interesting discoveries from the quantum technology, and it's a great, I mean, great many many more things which you can't even think of. So I mean, one of the best research I ever seen and one of the best findings I've ever read it out. So yep, amazing, dude. I mean, I have no words to explain it. So yeah, we are moving towards next topic. Ancient ice age valleys offer clues to future ice sheet change. Hmm. Deep valleys buried under the seafloor of the North Sea record how the ancient ice sheet that used to cover the UK and Europe expelled waters to stop themselves from collapsing. A new study published this week has surprised this research team who discovered that the valleys took just hundreds of years to form as they transported vast amounts of meltwater away from under the ice and out into the sea. This new understanding of what the vast ice sheets melted 20,000 years ago has implication for how glacier may respond to climate warming today. The study is published in the journal Quantitative Science Reviews. Tunnel valleys are enormous channels, sometimes up to 150-kilometer long, 6 kilometer wide, and 500-meter deep, each several times larger than Loch Ness, that drain of water from beneath melting ice sheets. There are thousands buried beneath the seafloor of the North Sea that record the melting of ice sheets that have covered the UK and Western Europe over the last 2 million years. Lead author James Crickman from British Antarctica Survey Base and the University of Cambridge says this is an exciting discovery. We know that the spectacular valleys are carved out during the death throes of ice sheets by using a combination of state-of-the-art subsurface imaging techniques and computer model. We haven't learned that tunnel valleys can be eroded rapidly beneath ice sheet experiencing extreme warmth. The team analyzed jaw-dropping detailed seismic images that provide us 3D scan of the earth buried layers informed by delicate clues discovered within the valleys. The author performed a series of computer modeling experiments to simulate valley development and test how quickly they formed as the last ice sheet to cover the UK melted away at the end of the most recent ice age about 20,000 years ago. The research suggested that this process is quick by geological timescales, with the melting ice forming giant tunnel valleys within hundreds of years, expelling water that could otherwise accelerate rate of ice loss. Traditionally, the drainage of water from beneath ice sheets is thought to stabilize ice flow, a process that could potentially buffer modern ice sheets from collapse in a warming climate. But while inspecting the detailed seismic scans, the author began to find telltale signature of the both stagnant and rapid ice movement within the valleys, complicating the picture of how these rapidly forming channels might affect future ice sheet behavior. What is certain is that the surprising fast rate of at which this tunnel form means that scientists need to start considering their effects in models of how today's ice sheet will evolve in the coming decades to centuries. There are no modern analogs for the rapid response, but the ancient valley is now buried hundreds of meters beneath the muds of the North Sea seafloor, record a mechanism for how ice sheet respond to extreme warmth that is missing from present day ice sheet models. Such models do not currently resolve fine scale water drainage process, despite them appearing to be an important control on future ice loss rates and ultimately sea level rise. The pace at which these giant channels can form means that they are important yet currently ignored mechanism that may potentially help to stabilize ice sheet in a warming world. As climate change continues to drive the retreat of the modern day Greenland and Antarctica ice sheet at every increasing rates, over a result our result call for renewed investigation of how tunnel valleys may help to stabilize contemporary ice losses and therefore sea level rise if they switch on beneath the earth ice sheets in the future, says James Crickman. Dr. Kelly Hogan, co-author and a geophysicist at Bath, says we have been observing these huge meltwater channels from areas covered by the ice sheet in the past for more than a century, but we did not really understand how they formed. Our results show for the first time that the most important mechanism is probably summer melting at the ice surface that makes its way to the bed through cracks or chimneys like conduits and then flows under the pressure of the ice sheet to cut the channels. Surface melting is already hugely important for the Greenland ice sheet today, and this process of water transport through the system will also increase as our climate warms. The crucial question now is, will this extra meltwater flow in channels cause our ice sheet to flow more quickly or more slowly into the sea? The work highlights a currently overlooked process that can rapidly switch on beneath melting ice sheets. Whether these channels will act to stabilize or destabilize the Earth's contemporary ice sheets in a warming world remains an important and open question. Of course, and it's a warning sign by the scientists and by the uh, findings given by the ancient ice age valleys that global warming is an issue, providing in the information. So it's more likely to be focusing on those kind of things, and few geophysicists need to be focusing on those kind as well, which is important. Yes, of course. So okay, moving on towards next topic. Dinosaur killing asteroid triggering global tsunami that squandered floor thousands of miles from impact site. The miles wide asteroid that struck Earth 66 million years ago wiped out nearly all the dinosaurs, roughly three quarters of the planet. Plant and animal species. It also triggers a monstrous tsunami with mile high waves that scouted the ocean floor thousands of miles from the impact site on Maxia Yucatan Peninsula, according to a new University of Michigan led study. The study is scheduled for online publication October 4th in the journal AGU Advances. presents the first global simulation of the Klitschberg impact tsunami to be published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal. In addition, researcher reviewed the geological record at more than 100 sites worldwide and found evidence that support their model prediction about the tsunami path and power. This tsunami was strong enough to distribute and erode sediments in ocean basins halfway around the globe, leaving either a gap in the sedimentary records or a jumble of older sediments, said lead author Molly Range, who conducted the modeling study of 40 master thesis under physical oceanographer and study co-author Bryce Arbeck and Palinshore Pale oceanographer and study co-author Ted Moore. The review of the geological record focused on boundary section marine sediment deposited just before or just after the asteroid impact and the subsequent KPG mass extinction which closed the Cretaceous period. The distribution of the erosion and hiatuses that we observed in the uppermost Cretaceous marine sediments are consistent with our model results, which gives us more confidence in the model prediction, said Range, who started the project as an undergraduate in Arbic's lab in the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences. The study author calculated that the initial energy in the impact tsunami was up to 30,000 times larger than the energy in the December 204th Indian Ocean earthquake tsunami, which killed more than 2 lakh 30,000 people and is one of the largest tsunamis in the modern record. The team simulations show that the impact tsunami radiated mainly to the east and northeast into the North Atlantic Ocean and to the southwest through the Central American Sea Wave, which used to separate North America and South America into the South Pacific Ocean. In those basins and in some adjacent areas underwater, current speed likely exceeded 20 centimeters per second, 0.4 mile per hour, a velocity that is strong enough to erode fine grained sediments on the seafloor. In contrast, the Atlantic and the North Pacific and the Indian Ocean and the region that is today the Mediterranean were largely shielded from the strongest effects of the tsunami. According to the team simulation in those places, the model current speed were likely less than the 20 centimeter per second threshold. For the review of the geological record, Moore's analyzed published records of 165 marine boundary sections and was able to obtain usable information from 120 of them. Most of the sediment came from the cores collected during scientific ocean drilling projects. The North Atlantic and South Pacific had the fewest sites with complete uninterrupted KPG boundary sediment. In contrast, the larger number of complete KPG boundary sections were found in the South Atlantic, the North Pacific, and Indian Ocean, and the Mediterranean. We found corroboration in the geological record for the particular areas of maximal impact in the open ocean, said Arabic professor of Earth and Environmental Science who oversaw the project. The geological evidence definitely strengthened the paper of special significance, according to the author, are outcrops of the Cape EG boundary on the eastern shores of New Zealand and South Islands, which are more than 12,000 kilometers, 7,500 miles from the Yucatan impact site. The heavily distributed and complete New Zealand sediments called Oligostromal deposit were originally thought to be the result of the local tectonic activity, but given the age of the deposit and their location directly in the model pathway of the Shish Club impact tsunami, the led research team suspect a different origin. We feel these deposits are recording the effects of the impact tsunami, and this is perhaps the most telling confirmation of the global significance of this event, Range said. The modeling portion of the study used a two-stage strategy. First, a large computer program called a hydrocode simulated the chaotic first 10 minutes of the event, which included impact, crater formation, and initiation of the tsunami. That work was conducted by co-author uh, Brandon Johnson of Purdue University. Based on the finding of previous studies, the research modeled an asteroid that was 14 km 8.7 miles in diameter, moving at 12 km per second, 27,000 mile per hour. It struck granitic crush overlain by thick sediments and shallow ocean waters. Blastly are roughly 100 km wide, 62-meter wide crater, and injecting dense clouds of soot and dust into the atmosphere. 2.5 minutes after the asteroid struck, a curtain of injected material pushed a wall of water outward from the impact site, briefly forming a 4.5 km high, 2.8 mile high wave that subsided as the ejector bell fell back to Earth. 10 minutes after the projectile hit the Yucatan and 22 kilometers 137 miles from the point of impact, a 1.5 km high 0.93 mile high tsunami wave ring shaped and outward propagating began sweeping across the ocean in all directions according to the simulation. At the 10-minute mark, the result of Johnson Isley hydrocode simulation were entered into two tsunamis propagation models, MOM6 and MOST, to track the giant waves across the ocean. MOM6 has been used to model tsunamis in the Dewey portion, and NOAA uses the MOST model operationally for tsunami forecast at its tsunami warming centers. The big result here is that two global models with differing formulation gave almost identical result, and geological data on complete and incomplete section are consistent with those results, said Moores, professor emeritus of Earth and Environmental Sciences. The models and the verification data match nicely according to the team simulation. 1 hour after impact, the tsunami had spread outside the Gulf of Mexico into the North Atlantic. 4 hours after impact, the waves had passed through the Central American sea waves and into the Pacific. 24 hours after impact, the waves had crossed most of the Pacific from the east and most of the Atlantic from the west and entered the Indian Ocean from the both sides. By 48 hours after impact, significant tsunamis waves had reached most of the world coastlines. For the current study, the researcher did not attempt to estimate the extent of the coastal flooding caused by the tsunamis. However, the models indicate the open ocean waves heights in the Gulf of Mexico would have exceeded 100 meters, 300 to 28 feet, with wave heights of more than 10 meters 32.8 feet as the tsunamis approached North Atlantic coastal region and parts of South America Pacific coast. As the tsunami neared those shorelines and encountered shallow bottom waters, wave heights would have increased dramatically through a process called shoaling. Current speed would have exceeded the 20 centimeter per second threshold for most coastal areas worldwide. Depending on the geometrics of the coast and the advancing waves, most coastal regions would be inundated and eroded to some extent. According to the study author, any historically documented tsunamis pale in comparison with such global impact. A follow-up study is planned to model the extent of coastal inundation worldwide at a big scale. That study will be led by Wesley Titov of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Pacific Marine Environmental Lab, who is a co-author of the AG Advances paper. We are moving on towards next topic. Spin flips shows how galaxies grow from the cosmic web. The alignment between the galaxy spin and the large-scale structure of the universe reveals the process by which different components of galaxy form. The large-scale structure of the universe is traced by the distribution of galaxies. This cosmic web consists of giant filamentary structures linking massive clusters of galaxies. Sorry, guys, there's need a break. I will be back in a minute. Welcome back, guys. So, where were we? Yes, a new study published in the monthly notice of the Royal Astronomical Society finds that galaxies with bigger bulges tend to spin perpendicular to the filaments in which they are embedded, while galaxies with the smaller bulges tend to spin parallel to these filaments. It all relates to the mass of the bulge, says astrophysicist Dr. Stephen Baras- Barsanti, from the Australian National University, lead author of this paper and member of the Astro 3D Center of Excellence. Galaxies, which are mostly disk with a low mass, to have the spin axis parallel to the nearest filament. This is because they form mainly from gas filling onto the filament and rolling it up. Galaxy bulges grow when galaxies merge, generally as they move along the filament, so merges also tend to flip the alignment between the galaxy spin and the filament from parallel to perpendicular. We think that merge must be more likely as galaxies move along the filaments towards each other. The direction of other merges drives the spin flip, says Professor Scott Groom, an astronomer at the University of Sydney and a co-author on the paper. This discovery shed light on the formation of two main components of galaxies, how they relate to the large scale structure and the motion of the matter in the cosmic web. Our motivation was to try to understand why galaxies spin and how they acquire their angular momentum from the material that forms them, says Dr. Basanti. Through this study, we can understand how mergers play an important role in the formation of the galaxy, both the central bulge component and the spin flipping, she says. This points to particular formation channels for how galaxies start to spin and how the spin changes as the galaxy evolves. Although this evolution has been suggested by computer simulation, the study is the first time scientists have used direct observation to confirm the growth of a galaxy center bulge can cause it to flip alignment. This is a subtle signal that is really hard to detect in the observation, says Dr. Barsanti. It made possible with the advent of integral field spectroscopy, a technique in which an optical instrument combines spectrographic and imaging capability to build a 3D image of a galaxy and at the same time resolve its internal motion. This study used a spectroscope called SAMI attached to the 3.9-meter wide Anglo-Australian telescope located in Sending Spring, New South Wales. The researcher used SAMI to survey 3068 galaxies between 2013 and 2022. Sorry, 2020. This staggering amount of data has taken years to study and has supplied direct evidence for the paper published. With the SAMI Galaxy Survey, we have spatially resolved spectroscopy allowing us to map the galaxy with spectra at many points across the galaxy, says Dr. Prasanthi. These tell us the internal motions of the star and gas within the galaxy, so we can measure its overall spin. This result will inform the next big stage of our research, the Hector Galaxy Survey. Hector is the next generation spectrograph replacing SAMI at the Anglo-Australian telescope, which will use to survey around 30,000 galaxies. Professor Stuart With of the University of Melbourne, who is the director of Astro 3D, says the paper advances the center key goals of tracing the distribution of matter from the earliest times in the universe of present day and build a 3D picture of the formation and evolution of the universe that we see today. Using the power of the Semi Galaxy Survey, which measures the 3D structure of individual galaxy as well as the position in space, this paper shows how the motion of mass in galaxies and position of galaxies are connected, which is an essential piece in understanding how galaxies assembled, says Professor With. The study was conducted in collaboration with the researcher from the Australian National University, University of Sydney, Johns Hopkins University, University of Hamburg, University of Cambridge, and Macquarie University. So these are the things, these are the findings given by the flip flops or spin flips, how the galaxy form, how the thing works, how this cosmic web exists. So yep. Moving on towards next topic, putting the brakes on heroin replace. Hmm. Neuroscientist from the Medical University of South Carolina, Mukes report in Science Advances that star-shaped brain cells known as astrocytes can turn off neurons involved in replays to heroin drug-related cues in the environment can ident- uh, intensify the drive to seek drugs, leading to relapse. In this article, a team led by the Peter Scalvas PhD and Anna Kruger PhD, both of the Department of Neuroscience, examined how astrocytes interact with neurons and whether astrocytes plays an important role in regulating the response to drug cues. When we learn how to ride a bike or solve a math problem, the messenger cell in our brain knows as neurons create connection that enables them to communicate better so that we can more easily perform that same task the next time. The same happens when we learn to associate pleasure with harmful substances like drugs. Neurons send a strong message to each other, motivating us to seek them out again and again. Communication between neurons is directed by a variety of cells, especially a group of star shaped cells called astrocytes. Astrocytes surround our neurons and act as traffic lights, regulating the communication between cells, especially during addictive behaviors. Another important player in addition and relapse in the chemical messenger glutamate. Glutamate excites neurons and causes them to fire electrical signal to communicate with one another. The Kelly Voss laboratory has been pivotal in establishing the importance of glutamate. Through decades of research, Kelly Voss has developed the glutamate hypothesis of addition, said Kruger. According to the hypothesis, too much glutamate can cause our neurons to fire constantly in response to drug-related environmental cues. That constant firing puts communication between cells into overdrive, encouraging drug-seeking behavior and relapse. Kelly Voss Kruger found that astrocytes can slow down overreactive communication. Astrocytes are like a brake in a car, and you're pushing it to stop the glutamate signal, said Kruger. But how exactly do they do it? To answer that question, the researcher used a well-established model of heroin relapse. In the model, rats first learn to self-administer heroin by pressing a lever. Following the liver press, they receive the drug along with light and sound cues, allowing the rats to associate the cues with the drug, then the drug, and moved, mimicking withdrawal. Finally, animals are giving access to the cue again, and the lever pressing is a measure of drug seeking and relapse. Using this approach, Kruger and Kelly was found the astrocytes adapt in two ways to reduce drug seeking drug during withdrawal. One family of astrocytes moves closer to neurons and guides glutamate away from the synapse, reducing communication between neurons. Another family increases expression of the glutamate transporter GLT1, which moves up excess glutamate. In both cases, astrocytes act as brakes and neuronal communication during withdrawal. However, fewer astrocytes were available to perform this braking function during the relapse phase, and they were located further from the neurons. Using a special chemical technology, Kruger and Kelly were able to turn astrocytes on and off to change behavior, showing that these star-shaped cells play an important role. Essentially, when astrocytes surround neurons, Kruger explained, they soak up to glutamate and shut off the synapse. She said, however, when they retract from neurons, it is like you lost the brake. These findings could provide new insight into how to prevent relapse, since astrocytes in the normal brain undergo two adaptation to suppress relapse. We think they may be valuable cellular target for development of therapeutics to target relapse in the substance use disorder, said Kruger. Previous clinical trials have shown that reducing glutamate alone is not enough to prevent relapse in humans. These findings suggest the possibility that a combination regime that not only reduces glutamate levels but also actuates it, the braking effect of the astrocytes, could be more successful and warrant further study. Historically, neurons have received all the information when it comes to behavioral pathologies, said Kruger. Our findings showed that we need to take a more holistic view of the nervous system and consider that cell types other than neurons have the capacity to influence behavior and might hold the key to treatment of relapse. To set the stage of new astrocyte based therapies, the Calivas lab is trying to identify potential gene targets. Many genes expressed in astrocytes that are not expressed in other brain cells, including neurons, said Calivas. Understanding which of the genes are critical for astrocyte regulation of relapse gives us the handle on how to design drugs that will selectively increase the ability of astrocyte to inhibit relapse. This is an arm to active research in our lab, and we have identified a few astrocyte selective gene products. They may serve as target in treating substance use disorders. Okay, so we are moving on towards next topic, because as it's already being cleared by the author and the scientist that how uh, the break on the heroin need to be do, otherwise it will be worse than we ever thought of. So moving on towards next topic, scientists identify pathway that triggers mice to scratch when they see others to do the same. Hmm, that's the human nature, of course. Human nature and the animal nature, I guess. So, yep, let's see. Researchers at Washington University School of Medicine, St. Louis, have identified a pathway in the brain of mice that is activated when the animals see other mice scratching. The researcher had previously reported that the urge to scratch an itch after seeing other mice scratching is hardwired in the brain. Now they have found that this is so-called contagious itching is controlled through a visual pathway that surprisingly operates independently of the visual cortex, the area of the brain that processes visual information. The new finding advances understanding of the trigger, the spurt itching, and eventually maybe point to a solution to quell each relation condition in people. The work also provides more evidence that some cell in the retina not previously linked to vision actually may exist us as we see. The new study published on October 4th in the journal Cell reports this contagious itch, which is a reflex response in mice, just as grooming is, must be somehow important for survival, said principal investigator Xiao Fang Chen, PhD director of this Washington University Center for the Study of the Itch and Sensory Disorders. We humans also experience contagious itch, but we have found that in mice such itching is controlled through a pathway that was not known to be responsible for seeing things that could imitative scratching behavior in an ancient productive behavior. Using technique to disable the visual cortex, the researcher found that even a mouse without a functioning visual cortex will scratch when it encounters another doing the same. In a series of detailed experiments, Chen teams found that reacting when other mice scratch requires a set of specialized cells in the retina of the mouse eyes. These cells, known as intrinsically photosensitive and retinal ganglion cells (IPRGC), connect to the superchemistry nucleus, a tiny brain region responsible for controlling circadian rhythm, triggering activation of scratching cascade. In 2017, the same research team discovered that the suprachemistry nucleus was highly active when mice began to scratch after seeing videos of other mice scratching. If you delete the specific neuropeptide that carries signal from the IPRGC, the mice don't scratch whether or not the visual cortex is intact. He explained mice without functional visual cortex were able to detect this scratching motion, and so they scratch. It's a behavior that seems relatively compares the phenomena to when a frog catches an insect for food. Frogs don't have visual cortex in their brains, but their eyes are very sensitive to movement. They can tell when an insect flies in a certain pattern or direction, and then can stick out their tongues to catch and eat it. Chan believes something similar occurs with the contagious itch response in mice. We found that IPRGC and some cells in the brain superchemistry nucleus are very sensitive to a mouse scratching movement. He said, we humans also get itchy when we see other people scratch, and we tend to yawn when we see other people yawn. But it's not clear whether the reflex has any use for us. In humans, the pathway for contagious itch may be different from the it's likely the human response requires the visual cortex, but in people, contagious itch may be just an evolutionary remnant. You have to go back to animals like these mice to learn why these types of behaviors may once have been or still or may still be important to survival. Perhaps he said, since mice are no cultural and often in dark places, it may be important for them to know whether the area they move around in could be full of insects such as mosquitoes. Because of the poor eyesight, one way for mice to know this is to see what other mice are doing. If nearby mice begin to scratch, that could be a warning signal that biting mosquitoes or other insects are swarming. You had better scratch now, better the mosquito bite you too. He said this kind of contagious behavior is widespread in the animal world. To learn more about how the visual pathway that was uncovered in this experiment might be important to survival, Chan teams now in studying how mice without functioning visual cortex react to other types of stimuli. Hmm. So these are the things once again given by the scientists, and interesting finding. I mean, uh, moving on towards next topic. Computational tool use DNA encoded approach to integrate and analyze different health data. This is the last topic of the podcast, so let's get into it. Brazilian researchers have created an innovative agile computational tool to link and analyze different health databases with millions of patient records called Tusky Blush. The platform encodes identification records in a database such as patient name, mother's name, and place of birth using letters that represent the nucleotides in a DNA sequence A, T, C, or G. This conversion of individual to DNA enables accurate record lineage across database despite typographical errors and other inconsistencies. The tool can be used in research, epidemiological analysis, and public policy formulation. For example, people who have been vaccinated by the SARS, Brazil, and National Health Service can be cross referenced to other datasets to find vaccinated patient with a specific disease, even if a vaccination record contains errors or uncompleted fields. Tusky Blush is able to link it to the same patient in another database because it treats inconsistencies as if they were DNA mutation. Genomics tools routinely near to compare fragments in order to decide whether they are more similar than different and whether to link the base pairs in question if each individual corresponds to a sequence of letters. Data from different repositories can be cross referenced and linked by the tool. The search is a valuable source of information for medical epidemiological research because it stores health data for millions of patients. However, records relating to disease and other types of data are stored in different databases that don't always talk to each other. The method we have developed is able to affect record lineage accurately and at great speed. Helder Nakaya, corresponding author of an article on the study published in the journal PRG, told Agencia FabWebs. Nakaya is an immunologist affiliated with the University of Sao Paulo School of Pharmaceutical Science, FCF, USP, and Albert Einstein Jewish Hospital, HAI, and the scientific platform Pasteur, USP, and the Tordos Pell Sordo Institute. He also belongs to the Center of the Research on Inflammatory Disease, CRID, one of the research innovation and dissemination centers using the tool in practice. Even before the article was published, Tusky Blush began to be deployed in practice to cross-reference data from the Ministry of Health Malaria Surveillance System with clinical data from the Dr. Hatier Derodo Tropical Medicine Foundation in Manuel's Emerald State, a branch of Osvaldo Cruz Foundation, Frescos, another arm of the ministry. The results showed that being HIV positive is a risk of Plasmodium vivax malaria patient, representing an additional challenge for public policy given the lack of single identifiers. Tuskegee Blast used a patient name, mother's name, and date of birth. The findings were described in an article published in May 2022 In scientific reports, the study was led by the researcher at uh, Amazonas State University UEA, Nagaya and FCF USP. Jose Daniel Alves Araujo, first author of the PRJ article, also participated. Araujo named the tool Tusky in honor of Santalia fluvids, a freshwater dolphin that inhabits the rivers of the Amazon basin. The study was led by researchers at Amazon's State University UEA, Nakaya and FCF USP, Jos Daniel Elvis Artigo, first author of the PRJ article, also participated. Artigo named the tool Tusky in honor of Saltia fluvids, a freshwater dolphin that inhabits the rivers of the Amazon basin. Blush, basic local alignment source tool, refers to a suite of a program used in bioinformatics to generate alignments between nucleotides or protein sequence across large databases. How it works. To develop the new method, the scientists translated patient data into DNA sequence using a codon wheel that changed dynamically over different runs without impairing the efficiency of the process. Codons are sequences of three nucleotides, the code of a specific amino acid in the DNA or RNA molecule. Codon wheels are used to identify the amino acid encoded by any DNA or RNA codon. This encoding scheme enabled real-time data encryption, thus providing an additional layer of privacy during the linking process. It used DNA to encrypt the information and guarantee privacy. Nagaya said the DNA encoded identification field were compared using BLASH and machine learning algorithm automatically classified the final result. As in comparative genomics, where genes from different genomics are compared to determine common and unique sequence, Tusky BLASH also permits the simi- uh, simula- the simultaneous integration of data from multiple administrative databases from the need for complex data processing. In the study, the group used Tusky Blast to test and compare a simulated database containing 300 million records as well as four large administrative databases containing data for real cause of patient infected with different pathogens. The conclusion was that Tusky Blast successfully processed record lineages for the largest dataset, 2000 records, despite misspellings and other errors and omission in a fifth of the time, 23 hours compared with 127 hours, 5 days and 7 hours for the state of the art method. The researchers set up website where user can translate words, phrases and names into DNA. Several countries such as the UK, Canada and Australia have invested in successful initiatives and develop novel data analysis strategies, Nakaya noted. So these are the countries used for these types of computational tools, and of course, once again, I mean, I mean, let's we are going to the basics. I mean, the we all know the internet used to give the information all around the world, giving the information, giving the news that how all are being connected, being acclimated with each other. So we are again providing a database in the region where everyone can put their data and easily retract their information with easy time. So I mean, once again, we are going to the basics, and it's being a clever decision, of course. So at the end, I just wanna say, I sorry. Actually, discussed that we have started a newsletter for you guys, providing you information which is not easily available on the surface web, and provided to you to get you affected to more knowledge about the life and how these articles going to be provided in you. So, yep, these are the things, these are the findings given by you, given by the art scientists, and being amazed by everyone. Thanks to you guys, thanks to everyone. I just love you. And at the end, I just wanna say, keep researching, stay curious, stay healthy. Okay.